I want you to rewind to a moment that still stings. Maybe you were at a party or gathering, standing near the snacks while two or three people chatted with ease. You'd smile, offer a comment, something witty, genuine, and they'd nod politely, their attention already diverted back to each other. Later, you might catch yourself thinking, why couldn't I just slide into that conversation? Or why did that feel so awkward? You tell yourself it's your job, your schedule, your circumstances, your life stage. You might even blame people in general, or social media, or this generation. But here's the part most people never admit out loud. It's not that you failed at friendship. It's that you're fighting against the underlying structure of how human social networks are wired. And most people never understand the architecture behind human social bonds. Friendship isn't a moral reward for being decent. It's a cognitive system with limits, patterns, and pressures, just like memory, vision, or motor skills. You don't lack something fundamental. You lack understanding of the invisible mechanics that determine why people connect deeply and why you might feel left out even when you're friendly, kind, and well-intentioned. The first piece of the puzzle is something social scientists call Dunbar's number. British evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar used primate research and human neocortex data to estimate that humans can maintain about 150 stable relationships at a time, and within that, only about 5 are truly close, emotionally intimate bonds. This isn't pop psychology, it's grounded in cognitive anthropology and supported by studies analyzing social network layers, call frequency, and relationship maintenance costs. Think about it like this. Your brain has a social bandwidth, and no matter how many friends you have online, there's a finite number your mind can genuinely sustain with regular contact, reciprocal caring, and emotional investment. Social media might show hundreds, but most of those are acquaintances, now not meaningful connections. Why does this matter? Because when you feel like you don't have real friends, it isn't necessarily because you're defective or unlovable. It's because you're trying to fit too many ideals into a biological and cognitive system with hard limits. Here's why almost everyone misunderstands the landscape of friendship. Humans overestimate how many meaningful relationships others have and underestimate the effort required to maintain them. Social psychologists call this the friendship paradox in Sitbo, the idea that your friends tend to have more friends than you do simply because popular people are overrepresented in social circles. Put another way, the social world looks easier than it is because you're comparing your inner experience with the best side of other people's social lives. You see their highlights, not their internal effort. But there's an even deeper psychological layer. Friendship isn't just about having people around you. Real friendship requires mutual investment, emotional risk, friction, and repeated affirmation through shared experience. Loneliness research shows that it's not just the presence of others that matters, it's the quality of those relationships. Being surrounded by people doesn't protect your mind. Being close to people does. Loneliness isn't caused by being alone, but by lacking specific needed connections, people who know you, care for you, and value your presence. In other words, loneliness is not a moral crisis. It's an evolutionary signal, like hunger, pushing you towards certain kinds of social repair. If the problem is structural, then the solution has to work with human nature, not against it. Here's a strategy I give to people who feel like social outsiders. And it works not because it's motivational, but because it's aligned with how human brains are actually designed to form meaningful connection. The first shift I want you to make is to stop framing the issue as I have no friends and start seeing it as I have been networking, not connecting. There's a difference most people never articulate. Networking is broad and shallow. Connecting is narrow and deep. Connection requires proximity, repetition, and existential investment. A principle social psychologists call the proximity principle explains that people naturally form relationships with those they encounter frequently and consistently. Interactions create familiarity, and familiarity creates trust. So ask yourself, who do you see regularly? Who do you bump into in real life, not online? and have even small, unscripted interactions with. If your daily routine rarely intersects meaningfully with others, your opportunities for deeper friendship are intrinsically limited. Once you understand that friendship emerges through shared experience and repetition rather than simply being liked, the strategy becomes clearer. The second shift is to stop avoiding discomfort. Real friendship doesn't require perfection, it requires vulnerability, those moments that make most people uneasy but are the currency of intimacy. Psychologists observe that avoiding conflict or vulnerability is a common pattern among people who struggle to deepen friendships. Rather than discussing things that feel awkward, they default to safety, agreement, and surface level kindness. But relationship research shows that working through disagreement in a respectful way is one of the primary ways bonds strengthen over time. It's the difference between having casual companions and having people who know the real you, flaws and all. The third shift is recognizing that you don't increase close relationships by trying to be friends with everyone. You increase them by investing deeply in few people who show real mutual interest. And yes, this is where many are confused. Being friendly does not guarantee friendship. Mutual investment does. In The Friendship Paradox, as studied by sociologist Scott Feld, your friends, on average, have more friends than you do precisely because popular people are simply more present in many social circles. This doesn't mean others are better than you. It means your environment, patterns of interaction, and existing social roles influence how connections form. If your peer group already has tightly knit clusters, it's normal to feel like an outsider. It's not a personal failure. It's a structural pattern that most people never discuss. What most advice skips and what transforms outcomes are specific relational mechanics you can start practicing immediately. The first practical step is to cultivate intentional, regular contact with a very small set of people, not acquaintances, not casual chat partners, people with whom you actually want emotional closeness. And don't overthink it. Start with one or two people. For example, instead of sending a generic, "How's it going?" text once a month, choose one person and send a specific invitation based on something you know about them. I remember you mentioned that show you're watching. Want to grab coffee Saturday and talk about it? You're not forcing anything. You're signaling attention in a way your nervous system and theirs can decode as intentional, not random. The second practical move is to invite small shared experiences rather than abstract plans. Friends aren't made by saying, "We should hang out sometime." They're made by doing things together, even mundane ones. A walk, a shared hobby, helping someone move. These are the real building blocks of friendship because they create repeated real world interactions that your brain wires into meaningful connection. The third strategic shift is to let near misses become second chances instead of cancellations. A canceled plan isn't rejection, it's data. Respond with warmth and reschedule. This signals predictable availability and emotional resilience, which are incredibly rare qualities and unexpectedly magnetic when demonstrated consistently. The fourth shift is to recognize your internal narrative about friendship and question it. If you tell yourself, "I'm just not a friend person," you'll act that way. Humans are storytellers. Your brain will produce evidence that fits your story. Change the narrative to, "I'm learning how to deepen the few relationships that matter most," and your behavior and outcomes will shift as a result. Finally, understand that friendship is effortful but not transactional. Real friendships take patience, repetition, shared vulnerability, and mutual courage. There's no shortcut. But aligning your strategy with the way human social cognition actually works gives you leverage instead of struggle. And let's ground this in a cultural touchstone people actually understand. In the novel Stoner by John Williams, the protagonist lives an apparently uneventful life, but his deep friendships few in number but rich in intimacy, are the central axis of his emotional world. They aren't chaotic or crowdsourced, they're slow to form and hard won, but they matter more than any network ever could. Likewise, in the film Her Dirty Spike Jonze 2013, the protagonist connects deeply with an AI not because it's easy, but because the narrative forces him to confront what emotional intimacy feels like. The movie isn't about technology, it's about what relationships demand of us psychologically in order for them to be real. And on the theoretical side, anthropologists like Dunbar remind us that there's always a limit. But within that limit are layers that expand or contract based on how much intentional effort and cognitive attention we dedicate to relationships. So here's the insight nobody tells you. You don't fail at friendships because you're flawed. You fail at maintaining them when you treat connection as a byproduct of friendliness, instead of a process that requires active mutual investment. The brain doesn't reward you for being nice. It rewards you for engaging with people in ways they, when you blink, can feel and recognize as meaningful. Rethink friendship not as a crowd to gather, but as a small constellation to nurture, and the connections that matter will follow.